y'all are being notified. We're going to give folks a little bit of time to get logged in. I'm back with Aaron Law, and we're talking about the characteristics of white supremacy. And we're maybe on our fourth one tonight.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. It's been a while. It's been a while. It's good to see y'all again.
So we just want to make sure that folks are logging on and catching this live.
So while people are logging on, I just would like to check in and see how you're doing today. How is your day? And yeah, like, let's be real and, without divulging too many details, like, how are you?
Yeah, I'm out of capacity.
Yeah.
It's been a rough day. And I guess I see more clearly the ways in which the talons of supremacy culture have a hold of people. And I've committed my life's work to composting supremacy culture, and as much work that I try to do with people, I'm exasperated. I'm out of capacity.
Yeah.
What about you? How are you?
I hear that. It's just been a weird day. Like, to me, it's just been a very weird day. I generally am a non-linear person. Just I can't do things in a line.
Yeah.
Generally speaking. But today was extra non-linear.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
To the point where I was like, what am I even doing? So it's just been a very weird day. And I just feel like we needed to acknowledge that. I mean, we've been together most of the day. And so we kind of know what's going on, but it's good to let folks into that and, just
and to be real with people.
To be real. And, in fact, we actually talked about maybe not doing this, but we wanted to just honor that we had said, we're going to do this at this time. And so tonight it might be a little bit shorter, just to be mindful and respectful of sort of the spiritual energy that feels a little low.
Yeah.
And also we just wanted to say hi again and to, continue this conversation because it's been a couple of weeks and we didn't want to just completely abandon it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, as I think about it, and as much as I am so tired and fatigued with what has gone on today, this is such an important conversation to be having. And as many of you know, I'm sure that you're watching the news. I think we're watching our democracy change and at the hands of supremacy culture. And the more we can talk about these things, the more that we can get clearer on ways to be in relationship with people, the better off we'll be. I just want to say hi to Leonard. Thanks so much for logging on. It's good to see
Leonard.
You again.
Yeah, I think too, I posted something about just in trying to spread the word on my little Facebook post. I said something along the lines of just wanting to I feel like the work that we're doing individually and together and with you all is to make these concepts visual and visible, rather visible, not visual, visible.
Tangible.
Visible and tangible, because the way they keep being able to be perpetuated and they keep surviving, kind of like this bacteria that just keeps spreading, is that they're invisible. And so by having these conversations and even by doing some embodied work around these things, we can really begin to understand how they've been made invisible, and how by making them visible, they kind of lose a little bit of steam.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important.
It's a little bit like unraveling.
It is a little bit like unraveling.
Do you want to tell the good folks?
No. Well,
but why don't you tell the good folks about your class?
Okay, fine. While we're waiting for a few more folks to join us, I thank you. That's very, very sweet. Maybe we can post in the comments later on Facebook, at least.
You can direct people to your website.
A little something. But I'm at erinlawembodiment.com, and that's ERINLAW embodiment. And if you go to my events page, you can see this nugget, this session that I'm very excited to be offering in come October, and enrollment is open right now. We have some room still for folks if they would like to join, if that feels right, where we're really going to actually be digging into a lot of the stuff that Dr. Robyn and I have been talking about, but really letting the conversation be sort of secondary to the actual sensations and feelings that we have in our bodies around this, and what sort of comes up around this, and sort of trying to suss out what is going on here in the soma, in our home, around these ideas, and like how do we build skills around that? How do we build skills that lead us towards resilience, and that help us to recognize the little subtle ways that these invisible things pop up. So, Clinton, we love you too.
Hi, Clinton.
We're so glad that you're here.
So good to see you. I miss you. I wish that we could be drinking cider together in Durham. Remember when we did that?
Oh,
I miss those times of being with you. So go to Erin's website, check out this course. It's for white folks and white passing folks. And if you've been following my journey, then you know that a lot of my work has been digging into these contours of embodiment. How do we have a relationship with our bodies? How do our bodies have a relationship with other bodies? I'm not talking about sexually, but I'm talking about how do we actually steward the right kinds of relationships with our bodies so that we can reformulate our democracy. And many of you know that I'm writing about this, and so Erin is offering this course for white folks and white passing folks, and folks are signing up. Erin is getting enrollments every day. I couldn't be a more proud partner to be watching this, and we've been quarantined since March 13th, and so
it's day like 1360 million.
Yeah,
5.
And I've watched Erin dig deep into this work of embodiment and cultural somatics, so it's very exciting to see what's emerging. And if you're a white person, white passing person in need of developing this bodily work with our home that we have, I really encourage you to sign up.
Thank you.
So
Clinton said, fuck COVID and this separation. And I just want to say thank you for that comment. And also, like, that is a big part of why I feel compelled to offer this space online, is just that I think a lot of white folks who are really invested in the work of investigating their own whiteness are trying to do this alone. And I think that what we know, especially even in these documents that we're talking about, is that individualism really doesn't work to sort of take down
and
these
ideas. That's been the myth and the lie that we've
right.
all been,
like, you just have to do your own work in the corner, like in your office or something, very privately. And in fact, what we actually need, what the antidote is community and communalism. And so my hope in offering this is to create some sort of community, even though it's online and we miss so many really precious moments.
But
But
I wanted to say something. So I'm doing a lot of therapy these days. I'm doing embodiment therapy with a trans embodiment coach. I'm doing somatic therapy with a colleague who is brilliant, and I'm doing the regular therapy that I've been doing for 5 years. And today I had my somatic therapy, and it was our first session. And one of the things that my therapist said is, we don't need to be together because presence and the thread of connection is happening right now. And it made me feel with her. And I just want to say, yes, fuck COVID and the separation. And also, what are the tools that we already have to bring us together?
And into presence.
Yeah. So,
which I think leads well into this. I think that presence requires that we actually slow down for a second and we feel ourselves. And so before we enter into this conversation, I wanted to do something a little bit different and hopefully continue this as we work our way through this incredible document, which we'll talk more about in a second.
Which all of our practices are designed to steward a better presence. And I think what you're going to offer is one aspect of stewarding a better presence with where we are.
Yeah. So where we are, we want to take a moment and acknowledge this incredible land that we get to really commune with, if we choose, and that has been here for us and continues to be here for us. And we talk a lot in our culture about sustainability and about how we save the planet. And in fact, I think sometimes it's worth going, how is the planet saving us? How is the planet there for us? How is she taking care of us, right?
Which we've affectionately been calling her Pachamama.
Yes, yeah. So this is just a moment to, if you're watching, if you're listening, just if it feels right and if it feels possible, just taking maybe one deep breath and feeling your feet or whatever part of your body is in connection with the ground, and just taking a moment to soak in that free earth energy that's right there, that gravity that is just available all the time. And just taking a moment to feel that. And we also acknowledge in this that, we are living on land that used to be Cherokee land, that used to be Shawnee land, that used to be Yuchi land, and probably other tribes of Native American people who kind of were migrating through this land that we now call Tennessee and in Nashville. And so just want to really take a moment and bow to that, and to acknowledge that, we're in this space that has been colonized, but the land still has its life and it's still there. And it feels good to me to acknowledge it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Clinton, for your comments. Threads of connection. That's what we're trying to do here in having this conversation, is create some threads of connection around composting supremacy culture. And we're going through these pillars because we think that making what has been invisible to all of us of just cultural practices, making them visible and showing the ways in which actually they produce harm for all of us, including people of color. We think that is one way that we can steward a better relationship with our culture. And so today, we're talking about maybe the fourth one, quality versus quantity. And I think that many of us can think of examples.
It's the other way around. Quantity versus quality. Quantity over quality.
Yeah. I think many of us can think about ways that we have been taught to think about this that if we have more, that's better. We don't really think about the quality of things. We think about what we can amass, what we can produce, and that more is better.
Yeah.
Can you help us
Absolutely
track that through also our body and whatnot?
Before I do that, I want to just acknowledge this week I had the privilege of listening to a podcast that I hope to put in the notes, at least on Facebook, in the comments rather, on Facebook. I think the podcast is called Unleashing Social Change. I actually had never listened to it before, but I remembered that the person who runs this podcast, and I am so sorry I don't know their name, they interviewed Tema Okun, who is in large part responsible for many of the documents that are circulating right now, and especially the ones that we're using. And just wanted to acknowledge, I did not know this, but that Tema Okun and Kenneth Jones, who wrote this original article, they wrote this together in 2001. Well, Kenneth actually passed away in 2004. And so I just want to take a moment for just to acknowledge that this was I believe a black man working with a white woman, Tema. And they were really, aligned in trying to articulate these little insidious, invisible concepts. And so, man, although, it was 16 years ago that he passed, I just didn't understand. I didn't know that when we first started this. And so I just want to acknowledge and appreciate the life that he gave to this, and just celebrate that his work is still out here in the world, and that Tema is still stewarding it so beautifully. And she, in fact, redid this document very recently, and sort of new iterations are coming out that are incorporating things like Adrienne Marie Brown's emergent strategy and other things. And so it's just really beautiful to see how she's able to take this work and adapt it. So I just wanted to quickly say that because I learned that this week, and it really affected me in a way. And I now feel like, we have even more responsibility to carry this work forward in a way that is accessible and that continues to affect sort of the fabric of our culture.
Well, and also just because I know that in this house, at least, we've been spending a lot of time thinking about ancestors.
Yeah.
And
yes,
the ways that
thank you,
Kenneth is our ancestor and helping us to steward this. He's still here.
Yes.
And we need to remember all the ancestors and
yes,
and the ways that they help us steward.
Yeah.
Yes, Tema is there in Durham. Yes.
Yeah, she's at Duke.
At Duke. So yes.
So cool. So, just bear with me for a moment. I'm gonna just read to us this original document, which again was made in 2001, and we may go into sort of the revamping because Tema sort of thought about all of this, and there's new language that I think she's come up with around this. And so the original language was quantity over quality. And I think we can all, we all live here. We don't all live here. Many of us who are watching probably live here in America, and we understand that this feels like a very capitalist just sort of tenet right from the get-go, that we must have enough, we must have quantity, because there's probably maybe a fear of scarcity that's underlying that.
I think about things like Sam's Club, Costco, that,
which, no shade, and also
the ways in which we have prioritized bulk shopping at places like Sam's Club and Costco.
And then if we look at like the toilet paper shortage that happened, and still you cannot get like Lysol wipes or Lysol spray, because the like this consumer hive mind kind of took over when we thought, oh my God, we're going to be inside for several months. We better get all the germ killing things. But in fact, like, it's not sustainable, right? Because now there isn't any. And like, I literally was looking online, and it cost like $120 to get like a jar of like, or a can of Lysol spray.
That's
like,
capitalism
what is
for you.
So, okay. So I'm going to read these and just keep in mind as I read them that they apply. Originally, this was written sort of for a reference for like nonprofit organizing and just sort of majority white run nonprofit groups. And so this is really applying to like a workplace. But I also just want to say, this can apply to us personally. It can apply to our relationships. It can apply in our families, because this is a value that has sort of gotten under our skin. So quantity over quality. So the first little bullet they say is all resources of organization are directed towards producing measurable goals. So I want to go on, but I think let's just sit with that for a moment. Because I think white supremacy would have us believe that we need to know what's going to happen, that we need to know how this is all going to come out. And then also that there is a destination. So white supremacy would have us believe that there is a destination. And in fact, you know what? I think I heard that in that podcast that I mentioned just a few moments ago.
And, that's the thing that I just want to say relative to the destination. People have a lot of questions about this somatics work that we're creating and stewarding. And a lot of people will ask me, well, what will it look like? Or how long will it take? Or how will I know if I'm on the right path? And it's so interesting that sort of linear thinking of going from point A to point B is wrapped up in
quantity over quality. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, and that, I think, in some ways we're also talking about product over process, which I think that will be highlighted in the next couple of little bullets that they talk about. But that is really huge, what you just said. Yeah, I think, and somatic work is by nature nonlinear. It is a process and hopefully a practice. And the practice is the thing that kind of defies a timeline and defies a goal. I'd say the one goal or the one intention that I would have around somatic work is literally to just be able to feel more and not shut down. But we'll get into that later. So all resources of organization are directed towards producing measurable goals. And sometimes we need measurable goals. Like, we're not on here trying to tell you that this thing is wrong or bad. What we are trying to do is just highlight how this is an insidious part, when we don't actually see it for what it is, of supremacy culture, and how that becomes the dominant narrative, right? So like, if quantity over quality is what we believe as a culture should be happening, then what happens to the quality? What happens to the process? What happens, right? So I think that's part of it. Anything to add, or you want me to?
No, I think that our constant focus on producing, I feel like I experienced that in the academy, that I always have to be producing. And when we are in constant production mode, we fail to participate in process, which is I think why so many relationships end in grad school. why people get burnt out before they even finish their degree. There's a lot there that we could talk about.
Yeah. I also not to belabor this, but this idea of measurable goals, again, I'm not throwing shade or not hating on it, because I do think sometimes we need measurable goals. Like, we need to sort of understand what will be different when we have composted supremacy culture, right? That could be it could be a measurable goal. The thing is, though, sometimes what ends up happening as a result of the process is actually not measurable, and maybe was not actually the goal that we set out for, right? So yeah, there's a lot there. And again, no shade on having intention or a goal, and also that can't be the only thing. Right? That can't be our narrow focus.
Right.
Yeah. So the next bullet is things that can be measured are more highly valued than things that cannot. For example, numbers of people attending a meeting, newsletter circulation, money spent, those types of things are valued more than quality of relationships, democratic decision making, ability to constructively deal with conflict. Whoa. Okay. So the things that can be measured are more highly valued than the things that cannot. And
it's the thing that funders ask me all the time. If you scale this, how many people will it reach? And that's just not how I think about the work. I think about, I was having coffee hour every Monday since March, and the first time there were 15 or 12. But it turned into the small group of about 5 people. And what we did was every week we shared intentions. And every week we had coffee together. And it wasn't about the numbers. It was about the quality of relationships. And these were folks who were seriously trying to deal with living in a pandemic. It was intergenerational. And we built a little small community. And it was the quality that mattered, not whether we maxed out our Zoom room, which is what funders will want.
Right. I want to build on that and just offer another parallel example. I know that probably on all of these, I've spoken about Resmaa Menakem. And if you don't know his work, definitely worth going and checking him out. It's just resmaa.com, resmaa.com. And you'll find just this incredible body of work. And something that he talks a lot about is the longevity of a group of white people specifically coming together to talk about race. And it was really interesting. I attended an online session that he did maybe just a week or two ago. And something that really stayed with me is he said, there were a group of white folks he has a book called My Grandmother's Hands. And he said there were a group of white folks who got together, and there were about, I don't know, I'm probably butchering this, but let's say there were like 27 people in this group, and they were using his book and they were going through his sort of guided experiences that he outlines for white folks in order to sort of look at their relationship to whiteness and how it's affected their lives and how it's happening culturally. And he said there were 27 people in the first year, and they've been at it for something like 9 years, and there are something like 9 people left. And those 9 people are going to make a huge difference in their communities because they have stuck with it. And it's these few people who have created a quality of relationship within the group. and have stayed through the conflict, have stayed through the I'm pissed at you, you don't have the same analysis as me, get out of here thing that we do as white people. I'm speaking for myself. And they hung in there, and now the quality is like upper echelon, right? Mm-hmm. And the numbers are not there.
Right.
And that's what matters, because those are the people who are actually going to change our culture.
Yep.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and isn't it Resma who says this work takes 3 to 10 years?
Yeah, always. That's his thing. He says 3 to 10 years. I mean, and we're talking specifically about cultural somatics, which is looking at how these types of concepts that we're talking about in conversation show up in our bodies, which again is the thing that I'll be working with in the session that I'll be offering this fall. So, should we read a little bit more?
Yeah.
So, this is interesting because it brings in another aspect of, oh no, just kidding.
Yeah, I was like, that's urgency.
Thank you. You hold this.
Yeah. We still print things here at the House of Somatica.
Yo, paper. Look at this. It's so good, y'all. Paper. I love it. I can read it. I can hold it. Okay. So I think we've kind of gotten into this a little bit, but the next bullet point is there's little or no value attached to process. If it can't be measured, it has no value. Whoa. Right. And I think of us both as artists in our own respect. And I think one of the most important things we have as artists is the process, right? And, you know, if you're a professional artist, eventually, you know, you may have set deadlines for yourself, and you may have booked a venue, or you may have booked a gallery, or you have a book that's due at a certain time, right? And, you know, eventually we have to deliver. But what we deliver hopefully will be a reflection of a deep meandering process. Like process, I think in and of itself infers a non-linear path, right? And so I think that that is hard when we're trying to have measurable goals of like, well, I should be at point A and then B and then C and then D, right? No, sometimes you start at D and then you end up at B, and then you're like, oh, actually I've got to go to C to get back to A.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Another bullet is discomfort with emotions and feelings. Whoa, wait, hold on. Okay, that's big. Quantity over quality would have us experience a lot of discomfort with emotion and feelings.
Yeah, because we're designed to work from the shoulders up and be disconnected from our bodies. And if we think about quality is something that is an embodied, a felt sense. Yeah. Right? You feel into relationship. And if we're pushing quantity over quality, then we are not focused on emotions or feelings or relationship or the process of emotions and feelings.
And when we're working in a group setting, the people who may have really important emotional responses that can help us navigate where we go next may be overlooked in the like pursuit of quantity of making a lot of stuff happen right now. And also just want to say, like you said, I actually think we're designed to feel and to have emotion and feeling and be able to have access. Organizations. But I think that what happens is that we're conditioned to not engage with what's below the neck.
Yes.
Yeah. So the last little bullet here is going into this a little bit more around relationships, so that there's no understanding that when there is a conflict between content, i.e. the agenda of the meeting, and process, i.e. people's need to be heard or engaged, process will prevail which I find really interesting. It's like almost like it's just going to come up and maybe even like come up even stronger because it's been repressed. So, and they say, for example, you may get through the agenda, but if you haven't paid attention to people's need to be heard, the decisions made at the meeting are undermined and or disregarded, right? And then what does that do? I think, I mean, in my body, I feel like if I feel into that, I'm like, oh my gosh, so much resentment comes up. And like, then I'm not actually tapping into my gifts that I can offer this team when I feel like I'm being undermined in order to achieve a goal, when I have actually these feelings that I maybe need to express that just kind of get brushed aside. What does that bring up for you or anything?
I think what you're saying is true. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add.
I mean, I think also just to be a little transparent, we at Activist Theology Project have started to look at this in our own organization, and we, at least Robyn and I have been like, okay, well, what other words can we use? Because we don't want to have a meeting where there's an agenda and you have to get these things done. And this is how we're going to measure our success. And instead, we've come up with words like guide and a flow, because, you know, we are trying to embrace that. Yeah, there are these things that we want to talk about and they are important. And also, if we don't get to them today, like that's going to be okay. The more important thing is that we have a relationship with each other and that everybody's voice is heard. So, yeah. So before we get into the antidotes, I just wanted to share the sort of updated language that Tema has released. And that is, instead of quantity over quality, she frames it as transactional goals versus transformational goals. And I think that Robyn and I have talked a lot about that together and probably independently or individually, that I feel like there's the quality of our relationship could be either transactional, well, not to say either or, but there is this feeling of like it can be transactional and it could also be relational if we chose, which could lead to transformation. And so I just love that this is sort of the way she's framed it. And she says transactional deliverables or quantifiables are ranked above meaningful engagement or qualitative goals, and rushing to achieve numbers. So just wanted to add that new sort of language.
Yeah, that all resonates with me. I feel like we spent a lot of time talking about that.
Yeah. And it's so dangerous and damaging and harmful when we just see each other as, you know, the little, what is that thing called? Like the card machine that you put your card into?
The credit card machine?
Well, like when you go to the cashier, it's a transaction, right? You put in your credit card, you pay for the thing, and you take it out and you leave. And it's like, I get this much stuff for this much money. But then the problem is that when we start to see each other that way, right? And just a quick aside, like I know one of our friends who is a Black queer woman who is an anti-racist educator, amazing person, really experienced that. And I would guess that probably a lot of Black folks specifically and people of color who are doing anti-racist work experienced that type of thing back in June and July, when there was sort of this surge around activism where all of a sudden they had all these followers and all these people who had just woken up and who were maybe giving money to their Patreon pages. But the problem is they were expecting something in return instead of just supporting the work financially. And so I just wanted to highlight that because I think there's some, we've, as white people, and I'm speaking for myself, we have to be mindful of those things. Right. So. Okay, so the fun part, I think, is feeling into the antidotes of these things. And so in this original document, and I think we've kind of touched on all of this, but they said include process or quality goals in your planning. So like, what does the process look? What do we want the process to look like? What kind of things do we want qualitatively about our relationships? Making sure that your organization has a values statement which expresses the ways in which you want to do your work, which is something I think we're kind of working on right now in our own organization, is like, what do we actually value? Yeah. Because I think the values actually, I mean, I'm sure that's sort of a muddled word, especially in sort of like the Christian world. But I think that values help us when we're struggling to make a decision. We can go back to our values and go, okay, what is it that I actually believe in? And what do I say I believe in? And how is this decision that I have to make going to correlate with that? Yeah. Yeah, and then they go on to say things like, make sure this is a living document and that people are using it in their day-to-day work. So there's some sense of like transparency and community around it. Looking for ways to measure process goals. For example, if you have a goal of inclusivity, think about, and again, this is written in 2001. Think about ways you can measure whether or not you have achieved that goal. So again, there's where the goal could be helpful. And then learn to recognize those times when you need to get off the agenda in order to address people's underlying concerns. And this kind of ties into another one that's on this list of fear of open conflict, right? If somebody has voiced a conflict and has voiced, hey, something's not sitting right with me, that's the thing that has to take the stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like that's really beautiful. And I wonder what it looks like for you all who are listening and watching to feel into your own process. How do we lean into process as we continue on, in our work, whatever our work looks like? For me, my process, at least, I have discovered that I need to be outside a lot. And I need to, especially just in relation to what's happening right now, like I need to be in contact directly with like the earth, with the water, with all of the beautiful little bugs and creatures and things that are out there. That is part of my process. And in fact, the more I do that, the easier it is to be able to do this work, which can be incredibly draining and feel defeating at times, and also is the most rewarding thing I think I've ever done. So what's your process look like, or what are you discovering?
I'm, as you know, and as many people know because I'm public about this, that it's been really hard for me to get into my body and figure out what a process is for myself. And not just focus on producing. And so I'm in process about developing my process. And part of that is this embodiment piece and being gentle with myself. And, I just had a great talk with a social media strategist a couple days ago who said, just be posting one time a day on Instagram. And here I thought, to be in conversation with my audience, that I needed to be posting 3 and 4 times a day. And she said, just post once. Be on Twitter all you want, but on Instagram. And that felt great to hear, that it wasn't about producing. It was about the quality of what I put on Instagram. And now it was so cool because yesterday I posted a book I'm reading and people commented and wanted to be in conversation. And I got to be in conversation with people. Yeah. And today I just made one post and people commented. And I mean, it seems silly to talk about social media, but a lot of my process is, how do I steward my platform in a way that will compost supremacy culture, and not just be a public figure and not do the authentic work of connection, relationship building. Like, I'm not there to perform.
Right.
I'm there to think out loud, to do some truth telling, and to build relationships, because I think relationships will save us.
Yeah.
So I'm very much in process about my process.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. Something that's coming through for me is just an embodied piece that I'm noticing right now in my own body. One of my mentors and colleagues, and just someone I respect a lot, Elisheva Wolf, they talk a lot about these sort of energies that speak back and forth to each other. And so, for instance, in times where, Black people are being murdered, there is a sense of, we must act now, and we must respond to our literal activated nervous systems, which requires that we go up and forward. Like, there's this kind of an energy. And to counter that and to care for ourselves in the process of that, we also have the option to feel into this back and down energy. And that's something that I have been working with a lot. And I feel, even as I'm here speaking with you all, like, my impulse in my body is to move forward and up towards the screen. And what happens in my process for me as I root back and down. And when we root back and down, it's often easier to feel how we're already naturally supported, literally by gravity, by the chair I'm sitting in, by, if you believe in your ancestors, like the ancestors at our back and underneath us in the ground. There's so much support from this back and down. And that's been a big part of my really recent, like, piece of my process. That is very nonlinear. It's not going to get me to a particular goal, right? But it's something that I value, and I'm coming to, like, feel into that. So, yeah.
There's so much here. I feel like, I'm out of capacity.
Yeah.
But
we
could keep going. And part of the wisdom in movement work is knowing when to put a bookmark in things. And I think for me, I'm out of energy, I'm out of capacity, or I'm at capacity. And I'd like to put a bookmark in this and keep going. Our next one is worship of the written word. And surprise, Aaron's mom is coming next week for a long visit. So we may have a chance to actually do a live stream with Aaron's mom, and it would be an intergenerational opportunity for us to actually talk about some of these things.
Okay, but we are not promising anything. We have not even talked to her about this.
Yeah,
we haven't gotten her consent.
To Mama Law,
but it might be a thing that happens.
I'm hoping it happens, because I think it would be great. Margot is amazing and has a lot of wisdom, and it might really be fun for us to talk about these things.
Yeah. So in next week or the week after, we may be back on.
Yeah.
We hope to be back on in the next 2 weeks.
Thanks so much, y'all, for being with us and for keeping up with our erratic schedule of when we do these pillars. Aaron, thanks so much for your wisdom and what you offered. It's always great to be in conversation with you.
Thank you. And I honor you being here, even though you had a really kind of a hard day, and that you are at capacity. It's like, I just really respect that, and also, like, totally respect that we need to stop now so you can rest.
And for those watching, if you want to post some comments, let us know what other topics you'd like to hear from us. That'd be great. For those watching later, after we go offline, let us know what you'd like to hear. After we get through this, we'll figure out what's next. And if we have some ideas from y'all, that'd be great.
Yeah. Peace, y'all. Blessings.